Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to a quick review of Alexandre Dumas' The Three Musketeers. What I'm going to do is give a brief overview of the books about type of things that I liked and type of things that I didn't like about this all-time classic. Now, a little backstory about me, because that's what we're all here for, right? The Count of Monte Cristo is one of my favorite books of all time. It was my favorite book I read in 2022, and I've been thinking about it ever since. Suffice to say, I was very excited to read The Three Musketeers. And also, just my general philosophy, books that are as popular as The Three Musketeers, certified classics like The Three Musketeers, in my opinion, the way I approach reading them is that they are a great book. I may not enjoy them, I may not like them, but a book like The Three Musketeers cannot stand the test of time and be renowned by so many critics, so many literary critics, and be delved into and be an icon in pop culture and in literature in general without being great. That is my opinion. It has nothing to do with whether or not you liked or disliked it, but I'm not going to be sitting here and saying, oh, this part was actually bad writing. So just take that into context with my criticisms. This is great. It's a great book. Fantastic classic literature. I am not a literary critic that is smart enough or would even dare try to take a classic off of a pedestal. Not that I'm about to rip this into shreds. I just want that as a general context of my view about classics in general. Okay? You can like them, you can dislike them, but you cannot deny if they're a classic, it's not like you're going to discover some hot take that it's actually bad and not good writing, okay? That's ridiculous. That being said, I did not like this book as much as Count of Monte Cristo, but I did very much enjoy it. I had a lot of fun with it. And they are different books for sure. Like this isn't going to be delving into the costs of revenge and how it eats away your soul. This is a pure adventure, fun time book, right? This is a modern day equivalent to like a fun, fresh fantasy book that you find on the shelves of Barnes & Noble, but it was written 200 years ago, and it still holds up to this day, which I think in its own right is such a fascinating thing. And I was really surprised with how modern it read and how just pure fun it was in a lot of ways. But let's just jump straight into it. As for the overview, you guys know the general vibes of what Three Musketeers is. Our main character, D'Artagnan, he's on a quest. He meets the Three Musketeers, and he gets kind of embroiled into this political plot of the King's Musketeers. The Cardinal is this dastardly villain. He's got his own men run out there, frequently comes into contact with the Three Musketeers. And the strengths right off the bat, I think the characters that Dumas introduces to us in this book, all of them are so fun to read. I think D'Artagnan is a great protagonist. He has his flaws. He's got a bit of an ego to him. He's got a bit of a swagger, but we like that about him. We do. He's extraordinarily likable despite his flaws, which is very important in a book like this. He doesn't always make the right decisions, but his heart is in the right place, and it makes him extraordinarily likable and a great center point, a great heart of this book, I feel like. Each of the Musketeers, also very flawed people, which going into this book, having only never seen the Three Musketeers movies or anything like that, I just assume that they're all just badasses. They all just run around with swords. And they do that a little bit, but they also each have their own distinct personalities with their own distinct flaws and vices. And it's very interesting seeing them all interact with D'Artagnan. There's not really a lot of all four of them interacting together, which I was surprised about that there wasn't more of that. But their each individual relationships with D'Artagnan, I think, was really wonderful to read. And overall, one of my favorite things about this book is just how many bro moments there are between the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan as a friend group. And I do mean bro moments. It's literally just a group of dudes being lazy or gambling or drinking, just hanging out, not being super heroic, not always saving the day on a heroic quest full of honor and nobility. It's just a bunch of dudes being dudes hanging out. And I just think it's so funny, okay? I picture them with their fancy hats and their sword always rushing into battle when it's mostly them just sitting around drinking, literally wasting all of their money for the majority of the book. And it's great. It's weird, okay? But I really enjoy their camaraderie and really like if D'Artagnan is the heart, the blood pumping through that heart is just the friendship between all these men, because they have their flaws. They hurt each other with their flaws. When D'Artagnan buys them a horse and they instantly all lose their horses, and they have to go get another horses, which takes up a lot of the book for some reason and kind of messes up with the flow a little bit. But at the end of the day, they all care for each other and they're always have each other's backs, and it's just like some of the most pure. And I feel like it feels like a realistic friendship as well, where it's not always just like, I have your back, brother. It's always like, yeah, I accidentally lost all your money, but at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, I got your back. It's kind of more like that. And I always thought that throughout the book those relationships were very strong and very enjoyable to read. The Cardinal is a fantastic villain, really like menacing in his own way, just the amount of power he wields. He has a weight to him in every scene that he is in. He has a great he's a scene stealer. You know he's in there. There's always tension when he enters a scene, especially when he's interacting with our characters directly. You're always on edge of what he's going to do and just if he's just going to kill them all, right? Because he has that kind of power. He has worldwide power, and he's interacting with our characters. And really a fantastic villain, and how he ends in this book, his final moments in this book. The ending of this book I absolutely love. The character decisions that Dumas goes with the Cardinal, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And someone commented when I said I was going to read this book that my feelings of the book will depend on the character of Milady, who certainly takes up a lot of screen time. And that, let's just, in the context of Milady, let's just talk about one of my flaws of this book. I didn't like it as much as Count of Monte Cristo. In that book, one thing I said when I did my review of that was every scene felt essential. And I know there's a lot of like abridged versions of Count of Monte Cristo, but I felt like that it's sacrilege to read those, because even though if it's a slower scene or it's a more informative scene, more of like a lore scene, every scene plays off. Every side moment, every side character interaction in that book pays off with the ending of Count of Monte Cristo. I don't think that's the case with Three Musketeers. I think the story starts off strong when we're following D'Artagnan, but once we get embroiled in like the political plot and we're introduced to the Queen and kind of her court and her drama with Buckingham and the King's involvement and the Cardinal's involvement in that, things do take a slow down turn. It is important lore, and it took me a minute at least to get invested in that plot, so I kind of slowed things down. And then we go from there into kind of the Musketeers' adventure. Like you think like an inciting incident happens, and then D'Artagnan has to go save the day. That event happens as a result of this politics that kind of slow to introduce you to. But then we go off into a side thing, and it's about like the horses, and he has to gather the Musketeers, but he has to solve their individual problems, which are kind of silly that they started them to begin with. And it just all feels like it's more relationship building with him and the Musketeers, and it kind of takes away from the plot that we've been introduced to. Eventually, it all does pay off, because I think those relationship building moments with the friendship with the Musketeers is a very important part of the book. But I just felt like that happening after kind of the slower drama politics building part, it kind of just messed with my interest. My interest waned at points through the book. Not that I ever thought it was bad, not that I ever thought it was super boring, but definitely like in the beginning, I'm like, stop talking about the Queen, I just care about my boys. Then it gets to a point where it's like, why are my boys just gambling for 400 pages? It's not that long, but it felt really long to me. Let's get back to the action. Like there's lives at stake. You need to get to action. And then it kind of turns into Milady's book, who's introduced in the fairly early in the story, but we really have a large section of this book is about her journey, and she's a villain. She's already established as a villain when we get her POV chapters. And at first I was wary of that, but I will say I actually really, really enjoy Milady as a character and as a villain. Another great villain. She's menacing in ways different from the Cardinal. She's menacing in a more like boots on the ground, will slit your throat kind of way. And her smarts, her intelligence, the way she gets out of situations that she absolutely shouldn't get out of, you can't help but like not root for her, because you're not rooting for her to succeed because she's fighting people who we know in the book are good people. But you can't help but respect the grind, because she is dastardly smart in the way that she gets out of the situations, and watching her scheme and watching her manipulate people. It's so fun to read that by the end of it, I actually really enjoyed her chapters. And her chapters are towards the end of the book, but it just led to a conclusion where it kind of all paid off, right? Because it took you all to get invested in the politics, but the politics pay off big time once you're getting embroiled in them, once the Musketeers get fully engaged in that, and with all the side relationship stuff with the Musketeers pays off at the ending because they're all so close together, and the Milady chapters pay off because the final confrontation between all those characters at the end of the book. So basically what I'm saying is my biggest complaints about the book were it felt uneven in its pacing. It does pay off into an incredibly satisfying conclusion. So overall, I very much did enjoy this book, but I would just say page by page, I didn't love it, but in retrospect, I thought it was a great book, and really just, it's so impressive to me, how, like I said this before, how modern it read, how fun it was, how easy it was to read. This is a very approachable classic, which I think is honestly an important thing for people to know if you're going to know anything about this book. If you're someone who's wary of classics because they're slower, which they are, which they're a little bit more verbose, which they are, I think Dumas is a perfect entry point, specifically this book. I think Count of Monte Cristo, more so than Three Musketeers, can be put into that classics category where it's too verbose, or it's too slow, or it's too weird, or it's too aged, or it's just harder to read, I guess. This is very easy to read. It's very simplistic in its plot and its character goals, but just like all books of this time, it is beautifully written, and it's got some beautiful friendships there. And overall, like I said, the characters are its strength, the Musketeers are its strength, the villains are its strength, and watching them to have this romp of an adventure was a fantastic time. And even though you might get slowed down at some parts, overall, not too long, a book, 600 pages, I thought it was a fantastic read, and I do encourage it. Absolutely. For the conclusion alone, because it pays off so well with all those plot lines converging, and overall I just really enjoyed it. Okay, what else can I say? Okay, what else can I say? Be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video and you want to see more in the future. Let me know your thoughts about Three Musketeers down in the comments below. I know literary critics pore over this text, and they find the deepest meanings, and they study this. I don't know if I can find that meaning, or maybe not if I can find it. I don't know if I did find a deeper meaning to it. To me, it was just a great classic adventure novel, which I think is a nice change of pace for classics. And sometimes you forget, I guess I'm still talking, sometimes you forget when reading classics that even if you're only reading books from the 1800s, there was different genres back then too. There was different styles of writing back then. There was different paces. There was different reading experiences that people would be getting out of different authors or different books at the time. And I guess one thing I wanted to say as well, in terms of my criticisms with the pacing, I know someone told me that he got paid per word. I guess what I'm saying is sometimes I felt like I could tell he was getting paid per word. Just the things that he would spend time on. It's why are we spending time on this? But it's not a detractor. It's more of a symbol of the time and the style he was writing, with the individual chapters being given out and being sold and stuff like that, and being an author that's being paid for word. That's not really a detractor. It's just the way that he was being paid back in the day. But I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating to read an adventure book of that time, one that still holds up. And I think if it was released today, would it be a hit? I was going to say it would absolutely be a hit, but I don't know. Sometimes people get scared with books that have the classic tone. But I would say don't be scared of this one. If you're not going to be scared of any, but don't be scared of this one. I really did enjoy it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Okay, that was an additional 2 minutes of talking for you. Thanks for sticking around.